Spiritual disciplines? Who comes up with these questions? I know it was me. All right, I don't know where to start with this, so welcome back. Joshua Verwers here. Good to see y'all. Vlog Pastor Season 3. Week number 4. The question today is, tell us about one of your spiritual development practices. Books, devotions, continued education, etc. Man, this is hard. So I've got to finish up this edit, and I don't know if I'm actually going to be able to get it done because somebody thinks it's a great idea to come up with these difficult, hard for me to answer type questions. I mean, we're talking like spiritual disciplines, and what is a spiritual discipline, and how do I answer that? I mean, hey Josh, so what about like meditation? What about it? I mean, you do that, right? Well, yeah, but I wouldn't consider it a spiritual discipline. No, I'm not talking about like, I'm talking about like Joshua 1:8 meditation where you keep reciting the Bible and you keep speaking it over yourself until you can see yourself actually doing it. That's a spiritual discipline, right? You do that. Well, yeah. I mean, I do that, and I would consider that a spiritual discipline, but not for this. Okay, so what about like exercise and walking? I mean, you do some of that as well, right? Not really. I mean, I don't walk as much as I really should. Okay, so yeah, you don't really do that. Yeah, that's a good call. Oh, but you know what you do? You know what you do? I said do. You do talk to yourself a lot. And like, 1 Samuel in chapter 30, it talks about how David encouraged himself in the Lord, and you talk to yourself a lot. That's a spiritual discipline, right? Well, I wouldn't consider talking to myself a spiritual discipline. I might consider it a little bit of insanity. But yes, I do encourage myself, and I should, but I don't think that that's what I want to use for this question. Okay, but what about fasting? I mean, you fast. You do like extended fast, and then you do short fast, and you do like intermittent fast all the time. And that right there, that would be considered a spiritual discipline, wouldn't it? Well, yeah. I mean, I would consider that a spiritual discipline. And honestly, that's probably the spiritual discipline that I practice most often. Last week, Dennis actually had this great message about worship, and he brought up Romans 12:1. Well, I've never really looked at Romans 12:1 as worship the way that he presented it, but I guess I've always focused on Romans 12:1 as the sacrifice part. And yes, sacrifice is a form of worship. I just never connected that dot before. But where I read that Romans 12:1, and it talks about how we're to present our bodies as a living sacrifice. Now it says a living sacrifice, which always stood out to me because it would be the opposite of a dead sacrifice. And if you didn't know what the difference between a living sacrifice and a dead sacrifice is, it's really simple. A living sacrifice can take itself off the altar. And so I guess for me, when I'm fasting, that's me presenting my body as a living sacrifice, because I could get off that sacrificial altar. I could take myself down, but I choose to stay on it. And I choose to stay on it because I want to bring this body under submission. But see, I struggled with this for so long, and then once I found intermittent fasting, all of a sudden I could skip a meal and I was okay. I could survive. And then when I started to read scripture and I started to see how many people were fasting and the type of spiritual breakthroughs that would come through fasting, all of a sudden I didn't make fasting an event in my life. I made fasting part of my life. I made fasting a spiritual discipline. So the typical thing for me on Sundays is just coffee. That's pretty much all I do. I don't eat a ton, and it's because of doing the intermittent fasting, but one of the things is not just about the food, it's not just about the dietary thing, it's not just about like a weight loss thing. It's more about the spiritual condition and realizing that I am not dependent on food. You know, like Jesus says, man shall not live by bread alone, but every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And I need my body to make sure that it knows it's not in charge, that God is my source and He's my provision, not food. So we'll get home and I'll probably have some more coffee and some more water, and I'll probably get to doing some editing and stuff like that. And then because I'm busy, I just don't think about it. And if I decide to, not just want to, because I always want to stick something in my gaping pie hole. Ooh, pie. Ooh. French silk pie. Ooh, pumpkin pie. Oh, coconut cream pie. Don't think about food when you're fasting. And yes, there have been people that have said, oh, well, you shouldn't talk about fasting so much because once you talk about it, you're going to get your reward and we're supposed to be doing things in secret. Well, you know what I have to say about that? If I was seeking glory for this, that would be one thing, and I'm not seeking glory. But the other thing is, how do we know that Jesus actually fasted if it wasn't made known to us? And really, I'm not trying to get you to pat me on the back and say, oh, Josh, you did a good job in fasting. I don't do it for you. I do it for him and I do it for me. That's the whole thing. And the only reason I want to share this stuff with you is because sometimes we as Christians, when we're exposed to different things, we understand different ways to actually serve God, to worship God, and maybe we can learn a new practice to develop our spirits. I used it. All right. It's 12 o'clock and this thing's supposed to be up by 2, and I got a half-hour drive home. I wonder if it'll get done on time. Oh, and before I go, I guess that means I'm supposed to tell you, stay blessed, enjoy God's best, and have a good day. You know, I'm actually going to blame Chase Jones for this one because he put the thought in my mind. And then he reinforced it when he made his worship vlog and he talked about how walking was one of his spiritual disciplines. And all of a sudden I'm like, I need to walk more.